Hello, Michelle.
Hey, Katie.
Here we are. Episode 15, Rebel Therapy Podcast. I am Katie, one of the hosts.
I'm Michelle, the other host.
Excellent. And before we even get into it, if you guys like our content, please consider liking and subscribing. That really helps us. Today, we are going to talk about something that keeps coming up over and over again, both in our personal lives, but also in our lives as therapists with our clients. And that is the importance of community. Unity.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
this
sort of like,
go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, how do you find community in your life? I think it's often an overlooked aspect of overall balance and health. Oftentimes we can get stuck in like I have to like fix myself or like self-improvement, which is, like
All for that.
maybe important,
All for that.
but then it's looking outward and how do you connect? How do you show up? How are you relating to the world in a specific way? What do you give to that? And then what does that give to you?
Yes, I would say, especially given that we seem to be living in an incredibly disconnected time. And we could talk about that for days. Everybody has their own stories and anecdotes or scientific or whatever about that. But despite the ability to connect more easily than has ever existed, we are unfortunately at a time where it is incredibly difficult, or certainly can be, to find community. And I say this as somebody who lives in, I think, the fourth largest city in North America. Toronto is now the fourth largest with the worst traffic. So now, okay, having said all of that, there's some really great things about this city as well. So you say, how do you find community? For me personally, I had lots of life changes at the beginning of last year when my son went to university and I had a little more time to myself and flexibility. And I thought, okay, what am I going to do? How am I going to do this? This summer, I joined a sailing club, which is not nearly as bougie as it sounds. It's this amazing club. And I mean, I'm excited about sailing. I love, as we've discussed in other pods, like I love anything to do with the water. Sailing was the next sort of natural evolution of that. It's amazing and I love it. But what I'm also recognizing is that while I enjoy the activity itself and being on the water and everything else, stepping into a ready-made community of people with whom I perhaps have almost nothing in common, with the exception of the fact that we are all there to sail, is pretty refreshing. I love it, actually. And I think you recently had a sort of an enduring concept of community. So I'm just baby steps. I've just started with this new group, but I'm starting to get to know people. I think you had a meaningful experience with community recently.
Yeah, so I've been getting more into singing. So there's actually like two aspects of community that I've found. One of them is a song circle, and I've been to a few. Those are often one-time events, right? So it's like you show up, they teach you the songs. It's like call and response, usually pretty simple songs. The focus is on the singing and you connect through singing together. It's very simple and pure and enjoyable. And it feels like something we would do with our ancestors. There's something about it that feels very connected to the roots of humanity. Like we sing together. Those have been really meaningful experiences for me and really enjoyable. The other aspect of the singing is I've joined a choir. It's sort of coming at community from a different way in terms of it's the same people every week. It's a ready-made community like you're talking about and fitting into that and feeling welcomed and, just approaching music and singing from a different way and a different type of community. So like that potential for it to be long lasting if you stick with it. And then those one-time events where you actually feel really connected. We're connecting through vibration, through our voices and the emotion and feeling that comes through that. But we're not then talking about it or sharing our stories. You connect through the songs and then you leave. And that is something very refreshing to me.
So many things come up for me as you say that. One is harkening back to my first career as an opera singer, which I know you know about. I know a little about music history, and I love the fact that you said it goes back to our ancestors, and it actually does. This idea, this tradition of call and response, a shared experience. You could argue that the blues kind of grew out of that idea, right? Where it's spontaneous, it's improvised, it's of the moment, and it's connection, right? And so if I think about the type of therapy that we do, it's all about contact, right? And contact can be ongoing in terms of a relational experience, or it can be momentary, right? I remember right after COVID was lifting, I walked outside and it felt so amazing. There was somebody else walking down the street and we realized that we could talk to each other. It was ridiculous. But we ended up being kind of stuck talking for about 15 minutes because we'd each sort of forgotten how to have a casual conversation. But at the same time, that moment of contact, the content of it was irrelevant. It didn't matter. But it was like me as a human and that other person as a human who I never saw again, just had this deep but fleeting moment. It was like, I see
Yeah.
you, you see me. And I felt like a high for the rest of the day, if I remember correctly. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that you touched on that human to human because that's such an important aspect of Gestalt therapy. That's one of the
Yeah.
bases of it, one of the non hierarchical parts of it, where it's like, yeah, I'm a person who knows about therapy. That makes me a therapist, but I'm
Hey.
not an expert. I am just a human talking to another human, and we're trying to figure this out.
And
And
I'm not an expert on you. I'm not going to tell you how to live your life. You know, I have opinions, but I'm not going to tell you how to do it because it's not for me to say. It's for me to be here with you as you figure stuff out. We talked about this previously. But
yeah,
I think the experience of seeing and being seen is deeply restorative.
absolutely. And what I was going to say is being able to remain individuals while connecting, right? And we talked about that before in terms of codependency and relationships and all of that, but we don't have to go into that again. I'm talking about it now in community and how we have been able to fit into community because we don't like being subsumed by other people. We would like to remain individual. So the idea of a community where it's like, we actually want you as your whole self, like all of you is welcome
Right.
here.
What I was going to say is, let's be real. You and I are definitely non-joiners. I'll speak for myself for sure, but I feel confident that this perhaps applies to you, at least to a certain extent. The tension is that I really deeply want to be part of a community as a human being and a social being and all the rest of it. But I'm a little bit resistant to join with other people because I don't know that I want to be part of that community. Right. And figuring out, how do we create a space where individualism is prioritized? How do we maintain our individuality within a shared context and
Yeah,
have that tension create a balance where I can show up as my whole person and have a place, right? And then, we talk about this in therapy all the time. Where is my particular place in the group? And that's going to be different than somebody else's. And part of it is figuring out, is there a group that I can join and what does that feel like? And then where do I fit specifically in that group where I can still be myself and honor all of my own weird quirks and individualities, but still feel like I'm part of a group. Yeah.
totally. It's like the difference between compromising or fitting in a way that is like putting the group ahead of you for that moment or that song, as opposed to I have to cut this part out of myself to fit in this hole you're asking me to be in. Even thinking about the song circle on a simple level, like we would start doing rounds. So someone would be singing one section, someone would be singing another section. And they were very clear about you can literally move out of your chair if you want to be in the other section. If you're in this
Fine.
section, you're singing within these range of notes, and maybe they're
So choose.
lower or they're higher. What like, do you know what I mean? But you can choose to be like, I don't love this part, but I'm willing to sing this part for the choir at this moment, or I'm going
So
to choose something different.
stretching versus sacrificing. These are not really juxtaposed, but you get my point, right? It's
Yeah.
the idea of stepping into something that is not super comfortable because it's new, but there's potential for connection
Mm-hmm.
versus I have to not be myself to be accepted into this group, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I just have to say the thing that came up in my head as you were talking was like every terrible wedding reception where people start dancing and it's like you go in the middle and you do your little weird dance and people watch you and then you leave and then somebody else you choose someone else to go into them, like horrifying, but also kind of beautiful, right? Like you get a little moment to be your freaky little self, and everybody's like yay, and then you leave and somebody else comes in and takes their place. To me, finding that kind of acceptance and connection is something that I think we are all missing, all of us, right?
That's a
Yeah.
very cute example. It makes me cringe inwardly because I'm
Oh,
like, please don't make
yes.
me do that. I
Oh,
don't want to dance in front of people like on the
no.
spot. If I choose to go in and dance, fine, but don't force me. Putting that
But you're not going to
aside,
judge the other person. You'd be like, oh my God, you're so cringe.
but I think there is something kind of lovely about like all we're asking from you is to show up and try, right? You don't have to do a particular dance move. You don't have to be good at it. Just go in the center, move your body a little bit, and we will all clap. Like
That's sort
that's
of a tacit agreement, right? We're not going to mock you. I mean, not to your face.
no, and it's like there's something inherently ridiculous about it. So it's like
Of
everyone's
course,
kind of on the same level of like, who cares? It's
we're
like
all
lower
being a little
stakes.
ridiculous, right? Why not take that risk? But, if I'm being really honest, I have been judgmental. I've tried to join groups in the past where I look at it and think, okay, cool. This maybe is a community that I could join. I feel like maybe we're like minded. And I show up to this event, whatever it is, and I'm just overwhelmed and put off,
Hmm.
right? By the almost culty kind of experience. I'm probably going to annoy some people, but I've tried a few wellness things. And like on paper, in theory, I mean, I am a therapist, my God, right? It looks like it should fit. And then I get there and there's just this like homogeneity, and whatever that word is. This need to be homogenous, this need to conform, and almost like this cultish kind of experience. I realized the other day that it's a little bit like judging somebody who's been starving for having bad table manners. It's like, well, we'll get to the table manners when we're like not starving anymore. And what I mean by that is that I think that so many of us are so starved for community connection that when we get to some of these things, it's just like overwhelming, right? And we kind of throw ourselves into it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like they're grasping, right? We talked about that
Yes.
kind of that grasping energy,
Yes.
right? Of like
Desperate.
when desperate, right? And it's like, yeah,
Ooh.
they've been looking for like an outlet and this feels like it fits in some way. So they go all in, but like in a way where it's like grasping at you, and you're like, great, I'm glad you're here, but like touching me,
It's a
like,
lot. It's a
stop
lot,
touching me
right?
energetically, right? Like that kind
Yes,
of
yes,
feeling.
but that's right. But I mean, the only reason I brought this up is to just sort of be real about my own judgmental sort of attitude and stepping that back into a place of deeper empathy, because I've been that person. I have felt that I want so much to be part of something, and then sort of the disappointment when that doesn't happen. Stakes can seem very high. If we were able to turn the dial as a society, like 10% even, toward the importance of community, that overwhelming, desperate need would be abated somewhat. The stakes would come down and it would just be much more natural. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. People often talk about having a third space in your life. Oh, it's like you
Right.
have work and you have home, and there used to be a lot more third spaces. Sometimes a bar for people or whatever, like
Or
a
church,
sports thing, church, like,
whatever.
yeah, but that there is this desire to belong somewhere and be accepted and be able to contribute in a way that feels good to you. And I think is like esteem building and also makes you feel a part of something meaningful. And that is very hard to find. So we end up grasping at it. But I do
Mhm.
like that analogy of judging someone for table manners when they're starving. Can you just like pull that apart a little more?
Just the idea that I stand at a table and people are cramming their mouths full and chewing with their mouths open and making all these weird slurping noises. And I'm a bit disgusted, a bit creeped out, right? It's just too much. But then I realize that my judgment is forgetting or ignoring the fact that these people are starving. I wouldn't judge a starving person for their bad table manners when they are finally encountered with sustaining food. And so I need to get over myself a little bit and step back and go, oh, I see. This is what's really happening. We are so hungry for connection that sometimes we fall all over ourselves a little bit and get a little bit grasping. We're a little bit too much or whatever. It's just more about my history, my experience, and my background, problems with authority, and all the rest of it, where I'm like, ugh, I don't know. Wasn't it Groucho Marx who was like, I don't want to be part of any if it would have me as a member? Like, it's that kind of like, I see you, I get that. At the same time, like I said, that tension exists, and it's this desire to find people, and we don't have to be a perfect fit, we really don't. It's more about that intention. And that cheesy dance circle really speaks to that, right? Judge me if you want, but do it in a kind way. We all have opinions and feelings and thoughts. But if I know that the group is big enough to contain me, then I can make the space big enough to contain you. It's a sort of agreement that we have together. Like, I'm not at all religious, but in my mind's eye, that to me is like the ideal situation of some kind of religious community or church community, right? This idea that you could walk into a different community, but because you have this shared context, you could step into somebody else's church and be welcomed and be part of that community. To me, that's beautiful. I love that. The
Yeah.
idea that it's like, oh, you're one of us, cool. And one of us could be like, you're one of the human race. Amazing, right? We all have similar experiences and shared context. The idea here is to expand our connection, not narrow it. Right. And
Yeah.
so this idea that you and I have these connections, you've gone off to song circles, I've gone off to sailing. This is amazing. But then I also have my gym community, completely different. They don't overlap with the sailing community, and yet I do. So the Venn diagram gets more and more complicated and richer, I think. Now we've got some random person potentially from my gym community who might be connecting with you through song circle. There are all these degrees of separation kind of idea. We are more similar than we are different, right? But
Yes.
it's about maybe not even getting rid of those differences, but maybe we just pause for a minute and focus on the similarities, especially in groups that are very disparate, right?
Totally. I think when you were speaking, I was thinking about what is such an important aspect of a group that does feel welcoming is the container that's created, right? So it
Yes.
needs to be porous enough that new people can come in and people can leave, but supported and structured enough that it doesn't just dissolve at the first kind of push at it, right? So it's like
Right.
we are coming together for this particular thing, and everyone needs to be on the same page about this in some way. Like, we are coming here
Right.
to
Like the
sing.
structure of it.
This is the
Sales.
agreement. You will not get in the way of other people singing if you just sit there, So
Yeah.
it's like, I think oftentimes groups are either poorly defined or people have different ideas of maybe how they should be run or what the rules should be. And I think that's all part of a group. But yeah, going back to the difference between compromise and being consumed. To me, a compromise is given willingly and consciously, as opposed to being subsumed or consumed in a way
Yeah.
that you're not consenting to, or you're impinging upon someone else's energy in some way that hasn't been consented to. I think that comes up a lot
Yes.
in groups.
One of the things I love about the sailing group is that it's all volunteers and collective, right? I do think that coming at it from a perspective of the collective sort of self-regulates some of those things, right?
Yeah.
So if we are all in this together, we find a path forward together that compromises. Ideally, everybody has a say, voice, meaning, and value. We figure out a path that allows us all to walk together.
You're all like, we're here to sail. What do we have to do to make it so we can sail together,
That's right.
It's like the history of humanity. How do we fit together
Kind
to
of it
have
is.
somewhat similar goals, and like we both want to do similar things? So we got to figure it out together. And so
Yeah.
willingly signing up for that, I think, is great, to be like, I'm willing to show up in this capacity, in this way, and that's it. And that's all I'm willing to give. And then
Maybe I'll adjust as I go, right? And I can step in this direction to a certain point. Maybe that's as far as I'm willing to go, and I take a step back, whatever, but figuring that out. And I think there is value as well in intentionally, if you've got the bandwidth, stepping outside your comfort zone. And I
Mhm.
mean, there are people with whom I connect more naturally than others within this group, right? It's possible for me to connect on some level with all of the people there individually. The depths might be a little bit different in terms of, oh, I kind of get you, or maybe we're more similar in other aspects of our life. But because we have this shared context, I get to know people that I would never know otherwise because they are just different enough from the people that I typically surround myself with, right? Where there's a richness in learning about other people's experiences, expanding my concept of the world, and developing empathy, which I personally believe we as a species, society, whatever, could deeply benefit from. Staying in our
Yeah.
little silos does not mean we need to develop empathy. Some of us may choose to, but it's not a requirement. If I just sit around by myself or I'm surrounded by all the things I already think are true, I don't have to develop empathy. Whereas if I go out into the world and I meet people who are really different from me and have really different backgrounds and perspectives, I kind of have to. If I want to stay part of this group, more practice of that.
Absolutely. Like being willing to engage your imagination and imagine what someone
Yeah.
else's experience is, right? What it might feel
Because they're
like to do that.
standing right in front of you talking to you about it. And you kind of have to, right? Sorry, I didn't
Yes,
mean to cut you off.
exactly. You literally have to be able to put yourself in their shoes in some way. And I think there is something beautiful about very clear communities where it's like we are around this one thing, because then I think you do get a lot of different people because they're engaging with it in a different way, or their connection
Right.
is that, and then you maybe do a lot of different things, right? So with the choir that I'm part of, it's probably 80 people. I just joined. I don't know all of them, but I know a few people in my section. And then
Right.
I have a casual conversation with someone else because we're all there to sing in this choir. I don't feel trapped in any of those engagements with the person or that I have to speak with them. I could be curious and then just walk away, or be like, well, it's time to sing now, bye. And it can be as simple as that interaction. There's no expectation that it needs to go any further than that, because that's what we're here to do, is to sing. It definitely is a bigger community. They seem to do a lot of things outside of
Mm.
singing together, but it's not a requirement. That's grown out of the community organically. People wanted to do different things like movie nights or clothing swaps or whatever. And I think kind of maybe
So
speaks to even that desperation of like, we need community. We found it this way. Like, oh my God, let's do all these different things together.
what I'm hearing you say, if we bring it back to that original analogy, is that here's the buffet, eat as little or as much as you want, and you'll know
Yeah.
when you're full. And then you can move on or hang out a bit longer, whatever. But it's all there for your choosing. I think well, I'll speak for myself. I mean, I have great friends, great family, love my clients, like things are good, right? And I'm grateful to say that, but there's space for connection, whether it's a fleeting connection, an exchange on the street, or a relationship that endures over years. It's the connection that I think is where the nutrients are, right?
I don't know. Okay. It's relating back to the idea of that container, right? Where it's like, we need to have that container strong enough that holds this buffet, right? And that's what needs to be maintained
Table?
is this buffet table, whatever. Yeah, this table needs to be maintained. And so we have all agreed to maintain this table, and this is the level of commitment that we are willing to give, right?
That's
That
right.
within that, there's a lot of flexibility of how much you give and how little you take and all of that. Yeah, so it's just like the feeling of connection, right? The connection is not individual, even though you might have individual connections within the group. It's part of this larger thing, this larger
Yes.
belonging, and like I am part of this and they're holding me and I'm holding them, right?
Yes.
And there's something so deep and beyond words about that, and that's why it can
Right.
translate so much across different things that we might do as humans. But that's kind of the heart of it, to feel like you're being held by other people and you're holding them.
I love it. And to that end, you and I have made a commitment to periodically on this channel highlight exceptional communities that we come across. So people who are doing cool stuff. Check back for that. If anybody listening knows of a community they'd like to highlight, drop it in the comments and we will talk about that.
Yeah, we would love to hear what you have to say and what communities you're part of. That helps to expand our sense of community as well. Like and subscribe, comment, reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you.
Join our community. All right.